So I kind of want to push this conversation away from PvP now, and I actually want to move into PvE. Now I know most people that are going to be playing this game are PvPers. We have a lot of the Lineage 2 community coming over here, but we talk a lot about PvP all the time on the forums and everywhere, and PvE is a giant part of this game. It's something you'll do from the beginning to the end of
So
time
infinitely, yeah, all the time.
while you're playing this game.
That is quite true. You will be busy for years if you want to max out stuff, I suppose.
So, one great quote I read on the Alpha forums, I'm gonna mess this up, but it was pretty much like the PvP in this game is the drink, the PvE is the ice cubes. One can't survive without the other, but it's so much less satisfying and kills the overall effect. And right now, everyone can agree that the PvE in this game is fairly dry. If you've been watching this Zaka video I have lying down, there really isn't that much to watch for or do. It is a punching bag. So with that, I want to move into the PvE updates we are considering talking to Dom about. Most of these are actually would not be terribly difficult to implement. Some of them would naturally take a lot more time than others. Mizu?
Well, yeah, if you're coming from your typical theme park MMO, then you're actually kinda accustomed to you hit a certain level, you do a dungeon, then kill mobs, do quests till you have the next level ceiling, do another dungeon. Now, because this is an open world game, there is no such thing as an instance dungeon. Nothing with bosses or other kinds of real mechanics. Till level 50, you're basically just grinding mobs that have no real incentive for you to learn your class or anything. I mean, you will hit a certain point around level 40 where the mobs start to get a bit more harder,
Mhm.
but otherwise it's really just pull 8 mobs, they're like, hey, we're a bag full of XP, and
Come kill us.
we like your blade. Please slice me open so I can give you this awesome XP. Which is really like Straight said, it's really dry
Right.
So,
compared to any other MMOs out there.
So with that, the one thing I want to talk about is upgrading bosses. So before you were seeing a video of Zaka, and now I've switched to a video of a guild quest boss. You actually obtain this boss, a boss scroll for this by completing a quest with your guild, and then your guild can summon it to get cool drops. So, but once again, if you look at the mechanics, there is really nothing there. You just dodge every once in a while to the other side of the boss. He swings a couple times, go on. So what we want to talk about is a couple things they could add to bosses like this. One of those, and the easiest one, is mob summons. Now, a lot of you who have played the game know what a sturdy mob is. It is pretty much Black Desert's version of an elite mob.
Elite mobs, yeah, from other games, right?
So what they could
Yeah.
do is have these bosses summon those mobs and have them shield the boss, heal the boss, or maybe attack random players with strong magic attacks. Because they're elite mobs, they can't be ignored and just thrown off. You actually have to deal with these mobs.
Well,
Right.
they shouldn't be ignored. There should be some kind of mechanic to the boss itself.
Yes. Another thing we can also add on top of that is the boss having area of denial attacks. So for example, right now, you're watching a video of a boss in lava. There should be lava pools that come out of the ground or something that would force players to either move the boss or move themselves. So you can't just sit back and keep attacking the boss without thinking.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea right there.
Yeah, and it's
Some
your
people,
easiest mechanics you can actually implement. You know, the
yeah,
typical don't stand in the fire mechanic.
right.
Another mechanic we have discussed is maybe adding a shield to a boss that you have to break. This would also encourage party play so you can break the shield effectively, and if you don't, maybe the boss gets enraged or gets healed, and starts doing crazy damage and attacking super fast.
That reminds me of Queen of Terror, you know? You screw up the shield, you're fucked, basically. To put it politely, you were literally screwed over. But yeah, something like that would be actually nice.
Another version of it would be something like small attacks. So, Mizu, thank you for mentioning Queen. For anyone that knows what Donut is, for example, this boss, we could have him attack with his tail or just something, so you can't needlessly sit behind without worrying about anything the boss is doing.
Right. Giving them just varying mechanics and attacks so that you just always have to stay on your toes. I think that would be great.
Yeah, it just makes it dynamic. You know, you have this great combat system, and all you do is stand behind a boss.
And
That's
spam
it.
skills.
Exactly. And most people at some point they get so bored, all they do is spam their left click. And that's about it. Because who cares if the boss dies 2 minutes faster? It dies anyway. That's the thing that makes PvE really boring, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Terra just got it really right, at least at the beginning. Their content, they really try to fully utilize that action combat feel. And
Mhm.
since Black Desert goes in the same direction, it literally screams for some interesting mechanics and boss encounters, and not just, yeah, I'm here, I spam left click, I'm done in, 12 minutes. 12 minutes? Can't I put my cat on my keyboard? Something like that. It's really not that interesting.
So I want to kind of push us forward a little bit and talk about another aspect of PvE that wasn't mentioned, and that's open world dungeons. Because a lot of these bosses we're not gonna see till later. So Mizu, do you want to talk about open world dungeons a bit?
Well, yeah, as I have been saying, there is no dungeons at all, but we want to try to keep the game as open as it possibly can be. That means also it would encourage world PvP, which is the main focus and core of the game actually. We want people to compete for things, which gives drama, which gives PvP. But for dungeons, this game really has a lot, and I really mean a lot of hidden caves. But they're empty in terms of all you get is boring trash mobs. So if you're an explorer, that's fine for you. But if you want to do some PvE, you get into the cave and you're like, oh, it's the same mobs like outside. There is nothing really interesting in there. You might find a hidden treasure chest. That's about it. So what we were thinking is, what you could do is just give those caves certain mobs, elite mobs for example, or even bosses with mechanics on a certain spawn timer. And they should also give you some kind of reward. Of course, not a reward that is vastly better than everything else, so that you're just sitting day and night in that cave camping the spawn. I
Right.
mean, other games have done that. Good old Ragnarok Online times, camping MVPs for the cards and stuff. But at least it would give the players some variety to their playstyle. I mean, if you're grinding mobs, why not make an open world dungeon where you can grind mobs, but you also have some more challenging things so your brain won't fall asleep or go into the so-called zombie mode. It
So
would just end. What's it called? I'm sorry, I forgot the word. Go on.
yeah, so you don't fall asleep while fighting. So with that, I kind of wanted to tie
Right.
that into group play. So open world dungeons are a great place where this game could start putting people and encouraging them to group. So one of the things that they can do with open world dungeons is require a 5-man group. Up the mob levels, or not mob levels, but up the mob health, defense, and damage in there to levels where you are pretty much required to go in with a
Required, yeah, for a
5-man
group.
group. That way, that'll one, increase player participation and player grouping, and two, just make the game that much more fun. And maybe
I
when
would
you're at the
say,
top of your gear, lower it down to 2 or 3 people. I'm sorry, Kento, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying in addition to that, you could also even add in, like Mizu was saying, add in mini bosses within these open world dungeons. For example, like the caves in Hasla, which is in Media, or
Which is, by the way, a really nice cave.
yeah, it's a really great looking cave, and they just really need to add some mini bosses in. And what they could do is also add a better loot table for all the mobs within there, since they're increasing the difficulty of it, and have them dropping things like I think a really good drop would be memory of fragments, which for those of you who don't know, those are used to repair any type of gear, but most people use them to repair your expensive equipment, such as Liberto weapons or Zaka weapons. I think those as a drop, the memory fragments would be great because it'll be overall an incentive to be going there, so you can just easily repair your really good top notch gear weapons.
So with that, that is definitely something I think they could implement. Make the open world dungeons harder to force people to group there, even when they're at their plus 17, plus 18 rank. By buffing loot, you'll encourage people to go in there early as a 5-man group and maybe get loot for the guild.
In my opinion, would not even have to buff loot. For example, you can make a cave that gives you more skill point XP if you are in there in a group. But you should have some diminishing returns due to the fact that people could camp the place, of course. But if it would be like you're an hour or two in there, you would get pretty decent or even better SP experience than on any other places. Or you could just put in some other things, for example, for gathering. A certain type of metal only spawns in the deepest caves below Calphion, which
But
you would need for armor, whatever you want to have.
but
Just give an incentive to go in there. I'm sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, but for keeping it for minimum changes for Dom, just buffing the mobs in there, making them more difficult, giving them a couple mechanics, so maybe in a group of mobs, a couple of the casters will be able to heal the rest of the mobs. Adding a couple mechanics and forcing a party to go in there and fight would just make it so much more satisfying than what it is right now, and
Oh
improved
yeah,
drops would
totally
keep
agree.
parties going in there, and maybe 2 parties will meet and duke it out for the grinding spot. Once again, it adds more to the open world. Speaking
Right.
about open
However,
world, I want to. Oh, I'm sorry, Misa, go ahead.
well, the party bag needs to get back. Otherwise, you can't go in a group in there. I
That
mean,
I completely
Yeah,
agree.
they did
without
take
the
that off our
party
alpha,
loot
right?
bag, that would be rather pointless. I mean, if we do not get trade, then we should at least get the party bag back.
We do need the party ride back. I agree. I'm not sure why it was removed in our alpha version in the first place.
Well, that's because the client is actually almost on the same update as Korea. It's just locked off content, same as the Russian client. So
Right.
they already have that update, which means it's gone for us now too, even though we might want to have it. But
So,
hey, an alpha version.
so to recap what we were talking about, they definitely need to update some boss mechanics, which we gave a couple of ideas on. Mob summons, have the boss shield and buff himself if you don't break the shield in time, and something along the lines of that. And open world dungeons need to be reworked to where they force you to bring a party in and naturally buff loot for them. Make it more memorable to go in there so you're actually fighting for it. Another thing they really need to do though for party play, the last thing I want to mention are last 2 things I actually want to mention. Bring back Party Bag, regardless if they add trade or they don't add trade. Party Bag is something that should be in there for group to quickly distribute loot. And 2, group XP needs a buff. At the moment, there is a horrible, horrible nerf on group XP. At 4 people, you are down to 30% XP per person, which does not make it worth it unless you can pull 20 mobs at a time. It should
Yeah,
never go below 50%.
Yeah,
which
I
I
also agree. I think it
totally
needs a
don't
huge buff,
understand.
major overhaul.
Exactly.
I think it should encourage party play, not discourage it. I think party play should be something that people go to as a way to progress to the game at a much more fun and faster rate.
So
Well,
before,
it is an MMO, you know.
Yeah.
People should play together. And one of the most common things you read on Reddit or on the forums, any type of forums, by the way, official or fan sites, is always, well, the game is nice, but it feels so single player, which is true. That's
Hmm.
why Party XP would be a real nice incentive just to group up with your friends and do the stuff that you do in any other MMO too with friends.
so before we continue, I just wanted to mention something that was going on in chat about changing guild GVG upkeep. I think the cost needs to remain in there to force people to force guilds to go out and grind, and I think having a scaling cost would just be the best compromise between the casual and the hardcore crowd, because there are both of these crowds in the game, just like there is a PvP and a PvE crowd.